Hi everyone. Today is once again February 28, 2017, and this is the second of two special vlogs that I am shooting as part of my final project for Christianity in the History of Social Action in America, Dr. Williams. And what we're going to talk about here is the history of white supremacy and Hispanic America. Now, most of the atrocities that white supremacy in America has perpetrated towards African Americans, towards Asian Americans, towards Native Americans, most of those are well documented. Chattel slavery, Jim Crow, Japanese internment, Trail of Tears. Most of those things are part of American history. There are things that we reflect on. There are things that we ask for penance for. There are things that America has in a lot of ways answered for. But there have been atrocities, both mental, emotional, and physical, that white supremacy has perpetrated. In his book Mañana about theology from the Hispanic perspective, Justo Gonzalez, who is one of the leading church historians, no matter what race around the world, talks about being in a meeting with other church leaders for the United Methodist Church, which the denomination I'm a part of. And he talks about how a white clergyman said, my country is the only country that has never engaged in wars of conquest. And who's still just sitting there. I can't imagine what he must have been thinking, what he must have been feeling in that moment, when, as a Cuban American, Justo knows all about wars of conquest the United States has engaged in. They happened in Mexico. They happened in Puerto Rico. They happened in Cuba. They happened here in the mainland United States, depending on your point of view. And that's never really been acknowledged. I feel like most people believe that, the United States just lucked into Texas and Colorado and New Mexico. Come on, it's called New Mexico. And they just lucked into all this territory, and they didn't kill and maim and destroy things for it, but they did. And who still knew that? And I can't imagine what he must have been feeling that day. But that is the plight of the Hispanic American in a lot of ways when you're around white Americans who have this high image of America and do not acknowledge the atrocities that America's committed towards anybody, let alone Hispanic Americans. So as I said in the last vlog, when America acquired this territory from Mexico, 125,000 Mexicans who were living in the land above that had been, according to the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, were granted full rights as American citizens. But almost as soon as the war was over, America took drastic steps to limit that citizenship. Most of that included basically taking without any right or without any cause, Mexican lands in New Mexico, in Arizona, in California. Some of this was used to make slave camps. The existence of slavery outside of the American West is kind of ignored for the most part, but it happened. And that happened a lot here in Texas, especially in the area between San Antonio and the Rio Grande River. There were a lot of wealthy Mexican landowners who owned huge chunks of land, and white Tejanos took that often by force. And one of the biggest instruments to that violence against Hispanics right here in Texas was the Texas Rangers. The Texas Rangers have this great history, and they have been iconicized through Walker Texas Ranger, and they are almost the holy holders of justice here in Texas. But to Mexican Americans at this time period, from the 1840s all the way up into the 1920s, the Texas Rangers were demons. They were demons come to life. Texas Rangers lynched Mexican Americans. They massacred them full gone. And it's a dark part of Texas history that does not get acknowledged. It certainly doesn't get taught to school children in Texas history. But it's honestly a huge part of Texas history that goes ignored. And Sorry. Um, More of the shameful history of white supremacy against Hispanic America has to do with the church, and sadly enough, with my own denomination. Daisy Machado, a former Brite professor and now the head of the Hispanic summer program that I attended last semester in Chicago, she wrote an article. She talked about how for Baptist and Methodist missionaries in Texas around the turn of the century, Protestantism, specifically Baptist and Methodist Protestantism, was the answer to what they called the Mexican problem. Um, Protestantism, in a lot of ways, was a weapon. Protestantism was a weapon against Roman Catholic Hispanics in an attempt to Americanize them, an attempt to make them less savage, and to bring them under the control of white supremacy. That's documented in several places, and especially in Dr. Machado's work. Um, and I'm a United Methodist, and I'm proud of it. Anyone who's seen me around campus and has interacted with me knows that I love my denomination. I love my church, and we have this dark history that doesn't really go that well acknowledged, and it hurts. It's painful, and I have to deal with that, and I have to pay penance for that, and it is really, really tough. I'm talking about stuff that happened hundreds of years ago to people that weren't my ancestors. My ancestors made it through. I can't imagine what some of them saw. I pray that they didn't have to go through any of this, and but this is the reality that these things happened to us. We got lynched. We got killed by Texas Rangers, massacred, and it's not acknowledged. It's not acknowledged in history. It's not acknowledged in the books, and it's painful for me to talk about now, as you can see. But it happened, and America needs to acknowledge that it happened. In his book Our America by Felipe Fernandez Armesto, he brings up one of a much more subtle part of white supremacy that really affects Hispanic Americans and really affects all Americans, and how we think about the founding of America. Now, if you think about the founding of America, you're going to hear about two things. You're going to hear about Jamestown in 1607, and you're going to hear about Plymouth in 1620. Yet the first city in the incorporated lower 48 of the United States was settled in 1519 by the Spanish, St. Augustine, Florida. The first city in the continental United States was Hispanic. One of the things that Armesto brings up in his book is that the first city in the United States didn't happen in Plymouth, didn't happen in Jamestown, didn't even happen in St. Augustine. It happened in Puerto Rico. Now, as we've tried to, America has tried to dislodge itself from Puerto Rico, especially nowadays, for a long time. But Puerto Rico has been America. It was conquered by America 120 years ago or so, and exactly 120 years ago, in fact, and it's America. And the first city in America was in Puerto Rico, started by Christopher Columbus with a couple of cows and goats. But America doesn't acknowledge this history. We don't acknowledge the fact that why everything was happening on this side in Jamestown and in Plymouth and Massachusetts Bay, there was Santa Fe, there was San Antonio, there was Los Angeles, there was El Paso, there was Santa Fe. Santa Fe was basically the de facto capital of what we now know as the United States part of Mexico. It was the biggest city around for hundreds of miles. It was one of the only cities that existed at that time. Yet Santa Fe and San Antonio and Los Angeles and St. Augustine aren't acknowledged as being founding cities of the United States. We live in a country that does not celebrate its Hispanic heritage enough. We celebrate it once a year on Cinco de Mayo, and we do it by appropriating a Mexican beer and tacos. That's how we celebrate Mexican history in America. And we don't acknowledge the Hispanic history of the United States. And one of the biggest claims that Armesto makes in his book is that he acknowledges that the United States of America is the most Hispanic nation on the planet. More than Mexico, more than Brazil. Well, Brazil's actually mostly because Brazil, they speak Portuguese and not really. So I'm going to start wrapping up this vlog by reading you some of what Ernesto writes in his book. This is This is in chapter 1, and these are some of the things that have been highlighted a lot. The correct answer to the question about the location of the first permanent European colony in what is now U.S. territory is, however, Puerto Rico, founded over 100 years ago, before Jamestown, as I just said. There was never a time, Armesto says, when most Americans, or most people in the United States, were white or English Protestants. Basically, what Armesto brings up is that we learn history east to west in this country. Because it was English Protestants who landed on these. It was the Anglo-Saxons. Yet the Spanish were here 100 years before. They were making grand cities. They were making the big cathedrals. And that's where America began. America didn't start at Plymouth Rock. America didn't start at Jamestown. It started in St. Augustine. It started in Puerto Rico. And I think American history is long overdue for a refurbishing. And I think it's time we acknowledge some of these atrocities that America has committed against Hispanics, and wonder why we don't get ahead of the way we do. And I know that's the reason. I know it's the reason for so many atrocities I've seen. I know it's the reason why there are 4 Hispanic students at Brite Divinity School. I know that all these things, just as slavery is responsible for so many things still, so many of the issues in the African American community, all these atrocities are responsible for the pain in the Hispanic American community. And this is just some of the things. I didn't even talk about the forced deportations of hundreds of thousands of Mexican American immigrants during the Great Depression. And of course, we welcomed them back wholeheartedly during World War II. We welcomed them back wholeheartedly. I haven't even mentioned the Baquero program, which began because of the need for labor during World War II, that led to the migration of over 4 million Hispanic Americans, mostly Mexican American, from 1945 to 1964, in which, there's some people who noted that the atrocities that those people underwent, were child slavery-esque, and Hispanic Americans went through that, trying to get a better place in this country. I want to call out somebody in this vlog. I want to call out Ken Burns. Ken Burns is a great historian. If you're a history buff, you've seen the Civil War by Ken Burns. You've probably seen it multiple times. But he made a documentary series a couple years ago called The War, where he talked about World War II, which transformed this nation and affected this nation in no other event in history. 500,000 Hispanic Americans served in World War II, often in our own units, but we served, we fought, and we died. We weren't in your documentary, Ken Burns. Where were we? Are you just going to disacknowledge the fact that these people that America used to fight their war, to beat the Nazis, to beat the Japanese, you're going to acknowledge that we weren't there? Ken Burns, pick a finger. But yeah, that's my call out for the day. But I know I come across in this vlog as angry, but this is a justice issue. We're only now starting really in this country to acknowledge the atrocities against Black Americans, against Asian Americans, against Native Americans. We're really just starting that process. But I think part of that process has to continue with acknowledging the pain that Hispanic Americans have been through in this country. The racism that we see because of ICE, because of forced, because of the End of the Dream Act and all this stuff, this isn't new. To quote the great philosopher from Stockton, California, Nathan Diaz, I'm not surprised, and really neither should you. But this is the vlog. This is the finishing project. Like I said before in the last vlog, there's no forum for this. Not even in Hispanic media, there isn't a forum for us to air our grievances, to talk about the atrocities that we've had. There's no forum for this. There's only the forums that we make and that we've been given a chance to make because of YouTube, because of Facebook video. These are the only forums that we have. So I suggest that as Hispanic Americans we take them, and I thank you so much YouTube for this forum. I thank you, Dr. Williams. I thank the rest of my classmates for this opportunity to do this project. I'm sorry I'm so angry. Sorry I got teary-eyed. But I thank you so much. It was a great class. It's been so much fun doing this project and exploring the history a little more. I thank you so much for all that you're doing. I thank you so much, and viva la raza.